Hello friends. This past month I decided to delve into the hellhole, so to speak, and once and for all really learn what BookTok or TikTok marketing was all about. Yes, as much as I hate TikTok, if you've been watching this channel for a while, I wanted to take some time to figure out what it was all about. Was it really worth it? So for the last 30 days or so, I have been deep down the rabbit hole of studying all the information that I could gain about how to use BookTok for marketing as an author. I spent hours watching YouTube videos, listening to podcasts as I was drifting off to sleep, skimming writer advice, marketing communities. I crammed my brain with as much information about this as I could, and while I was reading about it, I also was running some ads, making some TikToks to see if I could get any traction that way. With that in mind, this will be my last video because TikTok made me rich. Was any of it worth it? Did I gain any traction? Watch and find out. So using TikTok as an author is one of the most popular, yet also one of the most intimidating things you can do for marketing your book. And it's easy to see why TikTok is so intimidating. As soon as I started to delve into this even a little bit, I was reminded why I hate it. The first things that you need to know are that the algorithm of TikTok is very fickle, and you will see a lot of posts of people trying to puzzle out why this, why that. I was getting a lot of views, now I'm not. Have I been shadow banned? There's a lot of worry about being shadow banned. And TikTok also is the most censorship heavy of all the platforms. There are so many words that you can't use on TikTok that I can't even really find any kind of real list or guidelines of what they all are. But just know that if you mention anything racy, anything to do with drugs or violence, I've heard that anything to do with LGBTQ stuff might be iffy. Some people have gotten banned for posts that imply election interference when they were not posting about anything to do with elections whatsoever, so maybe be careful with like politically charged words as well. And the way that you would get around this is to just alter the word a little. Like, you'll see some people on TikTok say stuff like segs instead of sex, or unalive instead of kill. And you'll also see people like, add an umlaut to a vowel, or, just weird spellings, or like spacing out letters. There's things people do, but I mainly just went with like selecting a vowel that had some kind of dash or a foreign vowel of some kind to kind of throw things off. That's like all it takes to throw off the TikTok algorithm in most cases, apparently. But I did see it frequently mentioned that if you do post a lot of racy scenes, you are always running the risk of being censored, banned, shadow banned, etc. So a lot of people advise just to stay away from sexy scenes. We'll get into that more in a minute. So we have a fickle algorithm and we have a lot of censorship, but nevertheless, a lot of people are having big success on TikTok, and one of the reasons is the algorithm. Because unlike other social media platforms, this is a weird thing about TikTok. They will really immediately push your stuff out to a bunch of people who have never seen it before, to the point where a lot of people will post the same thing over and over with only slight variations, knowing that every time it's going to go to a different audience, and sometimes the same post will go viral one week and then not really perform very well the next week. And I've seen this in my studies of some authors' TikToks, that I would see them post the same thing, and like it would have 20,000 views one time they posted it, 4,000 views another time. That it can really vary. So this can also be a boon to someone trying to spread the word about their book, and that TikTok's going to keep showing every post to a bunch of new people, supposing it goes even at all viral, or even if you're only getting 200 or 300 posts, those might all be brand new people. The other thing I saw mentioned more than once is that TikTok users seem more ready to buy than other users. I'm not sure if this has something to do with like BookTok being so big that if you are on BookTok, that is like the place people go to find out what books to buy, or maybe it's something about TikTok that like people on TikTok are more addicted to dopamine than the average person, because I do find that TikTok has like a major dopamine hit kind of quality, if that attracts you. I have no attraction to TikTok, but I can see how for a certain kind of person you could get stuck on it for a while. And of course, another benefit about TikTok is that it's free marketing. You can pay to push out a post, but a lot of people never do, and you're getting a lot of exposure. Probably similar to Facebook ads, but without paying any money, so that's pretty appealing. There are even authors doing pretty well by running TikTok shops. Particularly, it seems, for like beautiful special editions, because TikTok is definitely a platform where people like to have their beautiful bookshelf. I should not gesture back at mine, but they want their like pretty color-coded sprayed edges bookshelf on TikTok. So if you're into that kind of thing, you can sell books on TikTok directly. So my brief experience with TikTok prior to this was some years ago when BookTok first started becoming the talk of the writer marketing world. I tried to get on there. I posted maybe like 7 TikToks. At the time, they were all the page flip style of videos where you just flip through the pages of your book, make that the video, and put some words on top of it that kind of are a teaser for the contents of the book. And when I opened my old account, I saw that my results for this were actually pretty good, considering I only posted just a handful of these and they didn't take a whole lot of time, that I was getting anywhere from 2,000 to 5,000 for most of them, and then one of them got up to 17,000 views. But I also know perfectly well why I did not continue with my TikTok account at the time. I didn't see any measurable jump in sales from these TikToks getting thousands of views. But I was also selling a lot more books at the time, so it was just harder to tell what was having an effect. Like, I was running Amazon ads, I was probably running Facebook ads, and I was just selling pretty well back then. The other thing at that time is that I had the crappiest phone you can possibly have. The camera was terrible. It was like even just getting a good video of pages flipping was kind of difficult on this phone because the camera was so bad. And I also really didn't have a lot of experience with like Canva, video editing software. So I knew I was not going to be getting very creative with it. I wasn't even very good at using TikTok itself. Like, the whole thing was just, what is happening? And it didn't take a ton of time, but it also didn't take 0 time, and I was already selling quite well at this time. So the idea of taking out a bunch of time to do something that didn't seem like it was moving the needle in a major way, when I could just be writing more books, making more money just by getting the next book out, that's what I really want to be doing. So I don't really have any regrets about abandoning the TikTok account. Ultimately, if I'm making a living with what I'm doing, I am not going to add more marketing. Right now, however, my book sales in April were my worst month since I started doing this in 2016. Just really bad. All the money, my YouTube and Patreon and sponsorship income has slowly been going up over the last year and a half, but that has been balanced out by my book sales going down. So I would love to be able to bump that up a little. And I'm aware that currently my only marketing is the YouTube channel, and it's not like the most targeted marketing. There's a whole big audience out there that doesn't even know my books exist. So it would probably be a good idea to get them out there in some fashion. I don't have money for ads right now, so TikTok would be a good idea. I have also gotten much better about using Canva, and I have a much better phone. So this was all a lot easier feeling than it was in the beginning. How much time did it take me this month to post a TikTok? About every day, sometimes multiples in a day, and then sometimes I skipped a day. So I didn't count them, but I'm gonna say I probably posted like at least 30, maybe 40 TikToks in a month. How much time did that take me? A lot of time. It was an extreme drain on my time and resources this month to do this without a whole lot of results for the time that I spent. However, I was learning all of this for the first time. A lot of mistakes were made. A lot of dead ends were pursued. And the most time-consuming thing of all was just trying to find the hooks from my books. If you do find a hook from what I'm reading, you can reuse the hook over and over, just changing it slightly so that it doesn't seem like precisely duplicate content. So presumably if I continued to use TikTok, it would get easier and more streamlined. So I'm going to get into the basic advice that I gathered on how to use TikTok, and then I'll get into more specific advice as to best practices and what I learned. Okay, so here's some common basic advice that I saw on repeated TikTok advice videos, podcasts, forums. One is not to put any external links in your TikTok description, because TikTok does not want people to leave the app. So a lot of people have said, if you put a link to your book in the description, TikTok won't show it as often because they don't want people to leave TikTok. That makes sense. No cover in your slide. Some people have said that if you put the cover of your book in your slide or your video, then TikTok will know that you're trying to market something and they won't show it as much. So that could be true as well. A lot of people say that before you start using TikTok, to prime your account with activity, and you want it to be the kind of people that you're trying to attract. So do not follow other writers, follow readers. You want to follow some accounts, interact with them, like, comment, do this for several days before you post anything on TikTok. My account had already been used and I already had a fair amount of people I was following and who were following me because of my earlier usage of TikTok. But then I started a new account about halfway through this month and I primed it for like 20 minutes and then I made a post. I didn't spam the app and start doing like multiple posts a day, but I didn't prime it a whole lot and things seemed to go fairly well right off the bat. I also saw someone say that their husband is a major TikTok user and he never primed his account. He never interacts with anybody at all ever and his accounts get thousands of views. So maybe, maybe not. There is a huge amount of debate, an intimidating amount of debate on what music to use. I've seen some people swear that you need to use trending songs on TikTok, like songs from the top 100 on TikTok. Then I've seen people say, no, don't use the trending songs on TikTok as a whole. Use trending songs within your genre. So rather than going to just the top 100, you want to look up like BookTok posted in the last 24 hours, see if there's a song that you can grab out of one of those videos. And then I also see a recommendation to just use commercial sounds because then you can promote the post if you'd like. And this can be very confusing because whatever method people have decided on, they like swear by it and are like, this is the most important thing of all, the right music, but they can't agree on what that should be. So I've just used it all different ways. Sometimes I go with what's trending that day. Sometimes I go with something that was trending in the genre. And some days I just go with whatever TikTok recommends to me. And sometimes I just pick a song that I like. Have I seen a major difference in what I chose as music? No. But I haven't had like a viral post yet, so I don't know about this one either. I just know that based on regular posting, it does not seem to matter. I've also seen people say, don't use images when you're making these TikToks that have a lot of human skin in them because TikTok will flag that as potentially being naughty. But I did see a lot of people using them anyway, so I don't know. I used a couple slides with people in them, but I did not risk it too much. And I often tried to pick ones that didn't have a lot of like exposed skin because I thought maybe the algorithm just goes with skin color, exposed skin, I don't know. And people are also in disagreement about whether you need to type the words in the app to get TikTok to like what you're doing better. Like if you type it in the app, some people say that TikTok prefers that. Other people just do all their posts in Canva in a batch. If you do feel like you need to type them in TikTok, one tip that I heard that was very helpful was that if you have a Mac phone and a Mac computer, you can type it on the computer, hit copy, and then paste it on your phone. I never knew that before. That's a handy tip for a number of reasons. Of course, it only works if you have a Mac and an iPhone, but if you do, there's something. However, I'm inclined to think this doesn't matter. I suspect that TikTok's like robots can pick up what you put text-wise in Canva, and Kate Hall is one of the biggest like TikTok marketing people that's out there on social media, And she says that she uses Canva and just does, and a social media scheduler, and just does a batch for the month, and then just has the social media scheduler post them all from there. And frankly, this is the only way that I can see TikTok being sustainable going forward for me as a social media strategy, is to do them all in a big batch and use a social media scheduler. It takes so much time out of my day to do a TikTok or two, like each day. No way am I going to keep up this schedule. So I'd say just do it like that. It seems to work for her. So now let's talk about the types of videos that you can make. Before you do a single thing, I think you need to always, with anything marketing wise, you need to put yourself in the shoes of someone who's going to actually buy your book. What you're looking for here is not the number of followers. TikTok does not even seem to work based on how many followers you have. Like, that seems irrelevant. So don't chase followers. Views don't really matter so much as the end game, which is selling your book. Because of the way that TikTok's algorithm works, that they will continuously push out any post to a lot of people if it goes viral. Like, it's very easy to just kind of randomly go viral on TikTok, it seems like, compared to other sites. And your followers and your like sustained audience don't seem to matter as much as they do on like YouTube or Instagram. So that's an advantage and disadvantage to consider, that a lot of your posts, if you want to use this casually, should be a really, really good hook. Now, there's people who are doing well with just having more of a social presence, showing more of the behind the scenes, the author life, what is their life like, along with book promotion. And if you really intend to build a community on TikTok and use it regularly because you love TikTok, that might work. But if you just are trying to get the word out about your books, that's probably not something you want to waste time on. I also think that it is important to remember that there are like two types of sales you can get when you're marketing a book. There's the hook 'em in that very moment so that they hopefully have to go buy your book this very moment because they must know what happens next or how this scenario unfolds. And there's just people who maybe aren't going to buy your book right now, but they like your genre and you're just trying to keep reminding them that your book exists so that the next time they're like, oh, I like this type of book, they remember yours and not somebody else's. When you look at people's social media presences, you can see people doing these two different types of marketing. Like the author Janetta Penner, I hope I'm saying Janetta right, but she wrote like a cozy baking fantasy. And I always see her on social media just kind of promoting her book like, hey, I wrote a cozy baking fantasy. Her posts are just hammering home that core thing over and over in slightly different ways on both Instagram and TikTok. And I wouldn't say that the posts I've seen from her are much of an immediate hook type of post, but I would also imagine they're effective at just keeping a continual presence in the back of people's minds that the next time you want to buy like a cozy fantasy with cozy baked goods, you're going to think of her book, because whenever you get on social media, she's there reminding you that she has a cozy baking book. The problem with this type of marketing is, of course, you're going to see sales in like a much slower and less direct way than when you're getting like that really killer hook where people have to read that very moment. You might have a viral post and everyone who sees it is like, oh my God, what happens next after this TikTok? Whereas if your thing is more about building a brand slowly, you're probably going to have to like keep at it for longer to see results. You just have to trust that you're doing the work and those sales are going to trickle in. This can be hard if you're kind of impatient and you hate what you're doing. But the most common types of effective and easy TikToks that I saw people mention, almost always slides, not the movie type, but a slideshow with anywhere from 2 to 35, I think is the maximum, images. And I've seen two different types of these mentioned. One is like a quick hook. It's just something like when the Fae King tells you he's going to kill you, next slide, but then you tear off your mask and say, but I'm your wife. Yeah, I don't know, I just made that up. But That's like quick punch. Here's a crazy thing that happens in my book. Then in the description, you put the book title and your name, author name. And I've seen people debate rather whether hashtags are still needed. And generally, it seems like you don't necessarily need hashtags, but you want keywords in there somewhere. So you could either do them as like just a list in the description of like, here's the tropes and things that this book has, or you could just do hashtags of those tropes and keywords. I find the hashtags just be quicker, but you could probably do it either way and it wouldn't really matter for SEO, which is, I think, what you're trying to get here. So there's the quick punchy slide, and then there's the longer slide. This will have a whole little scene play out, and each slide will have, it'll also start often, at least in romance, it'll still often start with the whole, when you find out blank, or when you get caught doing blank, or, you know, when you discover, and then you'll try to fit in the keywords of like the tropes, the characters. So you would want to have in there like the Fae King, the billionaire, the hot hockey player, you know, whatever you write, you want to have that on that first slide. Imply a good hook, and then the next however many slides, you'll have these quick, punchy little like 10 or so words of the actual scene as it is in your book, so that people will get into reading mode as they're swiping along, and then you kind of want to end the whole thing on a good cliffhanger so that people are dying to actually buy, or if you're in Kindle Unlimited, borrow the book. Another easy and common type to do is the page flip still. You have the book flipping by in the background. This would be the movie type. And then you would just post like an image, like a square with the whole block of text. So it's moving in the background, and then you have this block of text, and you put like a highlighter over like the best parts of the scene. Those are popular. I've seen a couple authors do a little video where they're kind of reacting in the background to the book. So you'd have like a crazy scene that's posted in the front, or like you'd write out a little crazy scenario in the whole, when the blank happens and this happens, and then you're in the background going like, like you're reading it and reacting. A lot of people post TikToks kind of as if they're a reader, even though they are the author, which I find a little like, that's hard for me to do mentally, is to sort of like market myself by pretending that I'm my reader, but it seems to work on TikTok. So, you know, if you feel comfortable with it. So that's like the nuts and bolts of what you're posting. And that sounds easy, just to come up with a quick little hook from your book, post it, and see if it goes viral. But in practice, finding the hook can be incredibly challenging. Sometimes we, the writer, don't always know what the best hook is, or the best way to like phrase the hook. You want them to want to read on, and you want to phrase it in like the punchiest way possible. So let me show you some of my own results. So the first thing I tried to do was market my new book, The Potion Dealers. This is a real book of the heart for me, and it was not written to any tropes or trends. It is a cozy adjacent kind of, has a lot of slice of life elements, but also has some adventure, some romance, some found family. It's about the heir to an illegal magic dealing organized crime family. They sell like magical artifacts and potions, and when his parents start to question his ability to like take on the business, then he ends up deciding to strike out on his own and do his own thing with potions dealing, find his own clients amongst the forgotten members of society. And part of what spurs him on is when he meets Livonia, who is kind of a little cottage witch sort of character, but Alfred's really passionate about magic, and his parents just are in it for the money. So Livonia loves that he's passionate about magic and encourages him to kind of follow his dreams, strike out on his own. It's set in my fantasy world, which this is like the 6th book I've released set in this fantasy world so far. And I have my own magical races, my own stuff going on. This is a problem because I can't just say the Fae King did this because there's no Fae. There's also no king in this book. There's almost no tropes. And believe me, I tried to think what tropes there could possibly be. the world has like a 1960s vibe, and that's kind of different. Maybe somebody out there wants a fantasy novel with like a rom-com 1960s, swinging 60s kind of vibe. I've also been like doing little comics with the characters, doing some lines from the book. So my first attempt, I did some TikToks using my little comics, using dialogue from the books, almost like a little animation. A lot of people have told me, and it makes sense because I read a lot of manga, that my writing has kind of an anime manga feel to it. Not the tropes of anime manga so much, but like the way that the characters just are, and the kind of humor and romance and like fun combo. So I thought maybe if I did like these little animated comic type things, maybe people would like get that. They did terribly on TikTok. They did quite well on YouTube, however, where I already have an audience. I even got a few subscribers from posting those. And I also had one do pretty well on Instagram. I cross-posted these little videos to Instagram and YouTube Shorts. They did terribly on TikTok. They did better everywhere else. But I was really trying to crack TikTok specifically. So I tried doing some of these standard slides. Now, the advice I've seen most often is that you want to find a scene that has deep emotional impact. It should be something that everyone can relate to. And a lot of the feelings that were mentioned were like loneliness, anger, frustration, rejection, like those big universal feelings. So I tried to find some things like that in the potion dealers, and there are some scenes, but they have a ton of context around them that made it very hard to pluck out an isolated scene for TikTok because there was just too much context in every scene. Nevertheless, I did try. They did not do very well. I probably worked on these for like a week and a half, and none of them had cracked 300 views. At this point, I thought maybe I'll do another TikTok account and just try to promote my fairy tale heat books because it's a long series and it's got a lot of tropes. I've got a lot of different books I could promote and try to grab hooks from. And that way I could see how a more tropey book would perform in comparison to this off-market book. Now, a lot of people will suggest having multiple TikTok accounts. Some people have like 12 TikTok accounts. The reason for this is so that you can post many different times a day on different accounts, and TikTok won't get annoyed at you for posting too many times, and so you can post like your different types of books on different accounts, and if you get shadow banned, you can like let that account sit for a couple weeks, post on your other accounts, come back to that one later when maybe it's come out of TikTok jail. I knew I wasn't going to be starting like 12 TikTok accounts, but I could do at least one more. So I did a Fairy Tale Heat TikTok account, and like the first post I did on there got like 1,100 views, where I hadn't been able to get 300 on my other account. And with the Fairy Tale Heat ones, I was mostly just going right for like the sexy stuff right away, because that's how those books are. So I was posting these Fairy Tale Heat ones for like a week, and they did much better. Quite a few of them got in the 900 to 1,000 mark. None of them went like viral, but a week is not very long. And seeing the results of this, I then decided to go back over to my regular account and try posting about the Broken Queen. The Broken Queen is about as close as I'm ever going to get to writing a romantasy. It is also set in my world, and it has the same kind of types of like deeper world building and deeper characters, but it does have more tropes kind of woven into it. So there's more scenes I could grab from the Broken Queen. So for just like several days, maybe even a week, I just posted Broken Queen TikToks, and I tried to find tropey parts. It's finding these scenes in the book that you think will sell and then trying to like smooth them out into some kind of TikTok. That is the hardest part. Takes the longest amount of time. I think it's particularly challenging if you're not really a reader who looks for the tropiest scenes, so I just sometimes have a hard time even figuring what people want, but I did my best. I did that for a week. I was also still posting the Fairy Tale Heat TikTok, sometimes like twice a day. And by the time I got through all of that, I had come to the end of my month of TikToking. Thank goodness. So you might be wondering, did I see any sales bump from any of this? No, not really anything that I could directly attribute to BookTok. Like, I sold 3 copies of The Broken Queen this past week, which is not bad. Usually it probably sells like 5 copies a month, so 3 is a good week, but it's also not like so good that it's obviously from TikTok. And I probably spent like 3 hours making all these TikToks in order to get maybe $7 in book sales. So this is not a great return on time. And I did not see any discernible bump in sales of the Fairy Tale Heat books, even though those TikToks were doing better. Despite all of this, though, I don't think that 30 days is a very long time to get yourself into a social media platform. And you probably wouldn't expect to really see results that quickly, especially when you're very much in the learning phase. Unless you happen to be somebody who's just really good at hooks. And I made a lot of stupid mistakes during this time, like constantly making dumb mistakes, just because either I didn't know how the app really worked and I botched something, or I made a mistake in the actual posting. I had one TikTok where it seemed like TikTok themselves just like wiped all of my captions. Like, I posted it and it was just a bunch of blank slides, and I knew that I had written them, and like the first 2 worked, so I know how to do this. I know that the words were there, but they just vanished. So I don't know. There were just like basic learning curve stuff. Like the first 1 or 2 I made, I had the text like off too far to the sides and at the bottom, where it ended up being blocked by all the stuff that TikTok puts on the screen. Many mistakes were made in this first month. And I could see the potential that as I get more deliberate in pulling certain hooks and kind of having an arsenal of hooks and refining the hooks and just streamlining the process, like I could reuse some of the images I've already done, just swapping them with different text, for example. This process could probably get a lot faster, and I could probably do what Kate Hall says to do. Make a batch of them in Canva and use a social media scheduler, and then maybe only take 1 day out of my month to do all the TikToks, and then not worry about it after that. That might also help with me not being quite as twitchy about it, because I was just, every time I post a TikTok, I tried so hard not to pay attention. I would have this mantra in my head, like, oh, watch TikTok never goes viral, to try to stop myself from seeing how it was doing. It didn't work. I would post one and I'd be so twitchy, just picking up, being like, oh my God, how's it doing? Oh my God, how's it doing? Oh my God, how's it doing? I don't want to be thinking about TikTok this much. So yeah, I'm probably going to take a couple weeks off from social media in general, and then I'm going to maybe try this batch scheduling social media concept, because I do think that I could be doing more to get awareness of my books out there to the audience that I do have. But for the type of books that I am currently writing, TikTok is a very unfriendly platform. And I have so much to say about this after my month of using TikTok that I'm going to do a whole separate video about that specifically. But this video is pretty much, here's how to use it. Here's my experience with it. Hey guys, disheveled editing Lydia here, plus companion Capalia. I have a little update on the TikTok thing. Right after I made this video, I decided to try a new angle for promoting the potion dealers, which was like basically because readers were giving me feedback that they really loved the 1960s vibes of the book. So I decided to like lean into that more with how I was marketing it. And I started doing some TikToks that were just focused on that this is like a 1960s mid-century modern fantasy, or a jet age fantasy, I called it in one. And ever since I tried that, it's actually been going a lot better. I've been hitting like 1,000 views, and I've had 3 sales since I started this like 3 days ago, which isn't bad. Again, like, you don't expect the momentum to build in just 3 days. So it could be a coincidence. Those could be unrelated sales, but I'm going to throw up a couple of those TikToks that have been doing better, just to show you like, hey, you know what? I guess maybe you should keep trying different marketing angles if you want this to work, because maybe you don't know how to market your book until you try some different things. I still think my thoughts in general about why TikTok might be changing how we write are still valid, so that video is still coming, but that's been a good result. I did not get into like the technical, like step by step, here's how you use TikTok in this video. Mainly because this is already getting really long. If you really have no idea how to use TikTok, I think that's a lot of ground for me to cover in one video. And I would probably, if you really want to do this, I would recommend taking a course on TikTok. If you're generally feeling like you are in a position where you want to level up your marketing as a writer, I think that goes beyond what I can cover in like a one reasonable YouTube video. But I do know at the upcoming InkersCon, they have a panel that's just devoted to TikTok. And InkersCon looks like it is pretty packed with marketing advice, just in general, from people who probably know a lot more than me. It is a 2-week virtual conference called InkersCon that was created specifically to help indie authors succeed. Starting on June 7th, they're kicking off the digital launch of the conference. I looked at their speaker lineup for both last year and this year. They have a lot of authors that I already know, have excellent credentials. I've seen some of them on social media, or they've written books that I've read. With your digital access pass, you'll get the entire curriculum of classes for this year. Topics on everything from showing emotion and characters to, yes indeed, TikTok. In addition to getting these 24 classes taught by bestsellers and industry experts, you'll get invited to a ton of interactive online events like Q&As with best-selling authors, writing sprint sessions, networking events, author roundtables, and a lot more. It's really easy to register, and I have a $50 off coupon. So you'll get the entire curriculum and all the 2 weeks of events for only $199, which I think is quite a good price for all the material that is in this conference. I went to an online conference myself several years ago, and I had so many notes. I was so fired up to work. I'm pretty sure I paid more than $199 for that one. If you want to check it out, go to inkerscon.com or the link in the description and use my code CozyCreative25. So that was my takeaway from my month of using TikTok. And I know there's things I didn't cover in this video. I know there's probably going to be some questions. So if you have some questions, do drop them in the comments and I will try my best to answer them all to the best of my knowledge. Maybe if I get enough questions, I'll do a follow-up post on my Patreon and Substack, which have a lot of free content on both, as well as the paid tier gets you access to 2 bonus videos a month voted on by you guys. And the $5 Patreon or Substack tier gets you access to my Discord, which is a great little community of fellow writers and artists where I post topics of the day and is my favorite little corner of the internet. And if you would like to read any of my books, I have a link in the description for those. The Hidden Lands books are the books of my heart, but then I also have all of my written to market stuff. I didn't even introduce myself. You don't even know who I am or why I have any authority to talk about this. My name is Lydia Foxglove, and I've been a fantasy author since 2009, full-time for the most part. And on this channel, I talk about the creative life in general and writing in particular. As always, thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you next time. Bye!